Hello and welcome to part two of Betting People with Lewis Tomlinson. Going to get really into handicapping and more on punting in this part. And I want to start by asking you, Lewis, how do you go about assessing a typical race?
I guess it depends on the type of race, the trip, the field, etc., etc. I guess maybe from saying a handicap, I guess my first port of call would be to try and work out which horses I reckon are the best handicapped, and then kind of work back and try and find out, well, are there potential reasons in this race why they may underperform, why they may not be able to run to their mark, or why they may not be able to find that expected improvement. I guess I'm quite a numbers man. I don't keep my own personal ratings, but I say I'm a time form man. We have our ratings. We have, and you kind of have your own. I think everyone in racing kind of has their own figures in the head of what sort of ability horses are running to, or you rate them as which ones are overrated, which ones might have a bit more to come. And I think that's kind of my starting point. But then obviously on the flat, when you're looking at the Stewards Cup, when it's a week or two ago, when it was all the hold up horses on the near side coming to the fore, and that was pretty predictable. If you were to look at the draw and where all the pace was, you could have gone pretty close along them lines and come to a similar conclusion of what actually happened in the race, even if the horses might not have been outstanding on their form claims. So it's always looking for things like that, and also looking for things other people consider a factor that you don't. I've got this very, very badly wrong, but all through the winter I was banging the drum that Bob Ollinger's jumping was not as bad as everyone said it was, and he's ran no sort of race the last twice, has he? But I took that opinion and I thought that would be where the value might have been, that people were putting more credence into a factor that I didn't really think mattered that much. I'd have been mullered anyway. Even if he jumped like a stag, he'd have got nowhere near. But that to me is almost like a core principle. Is like I said, trusting yourself, and if you can't find a reason why the horse you think's the best at the weights can get beat, and it's a fair price, probably a bet.
Just on that sort of area of having different opinion and going from the markets, would you have your own tissues? When you were looking at Bob Ollinger going for whatever targets, did you have a price for him in your mind that he should be, and are you just sometimes betting against the market on that, or do you have sort of different factors, or is it sometimes time based, or is it sometimes just, no, I don't think he's as bad a jumper as everybody else is, ergo he will be overpriced and I'm happy to take whatever up to like 3-1 or something?
Everything has its price. I think even if I thought a horse was as close to a stone cold certainty in this game, there'd be a price where it would become unbackable, and that applies to every horse in every race. I think some horses, like you say, you consider a bet at 8, maybe not at 6 as 11-2. So yeah, like I say, I think you're probably doing your head of when in your head when you think a horse is becoming too short. So yeah, I wouldn't say I'm not generally blind to price, even though I think it's obviously it's a major factor. I'm not going to play if I think a horse is on the short side, even if I do think it's the likely swinner.
Now, obviously, everybody has their different ways of analysing races, or their most important factors. Presuming that time or time figures would be like right up there for you, what other areas do you pretty much always go for when you're looking at a race? Will you always be looking at what the ground's like, what on the flats at the draw, course form, etc. And where does breeding come into this as well? Because plenty of people will have dosage profiles for horses. For example, Little Big Bear, whatever, they'll look at his dosage profile and deciding for themselves if he can go to a mile or he should stay sprinting.
Yeah, like you said, I think pedigree, especially on the flat and with younger horses, it's a massive factor in it. It's I tend to be more keen on putting kind of like handicaps with slightly more exposed horses, but I love the pedigree side of it. Maybe not quite from a punting point of view, but from, as like I said, not growing up around racing, the sort of like the bit that's a little bit behind the curtain, like the whole pedigree and breeding aspect of the industry, absolutely fascinates me. I want to keep learning more about that. Things like conformation and stuff like that. I'm obsessed with at the minute, because they're the things that you can't learn unless you're exposed to it and put the time in to learn it. But no, back to the punting with it. I think I'm a visual man. I think I tend to work back from visual. So if a horse catches the eye or looks a bit unlucky or wins well enough, and then kind of the numbers stack up with it, that's the sort of profile I like. Also, I'm very much a handicapping man. So if I feel like a horse has been let off fairly lightly, I guess an example of that I can think of would be I had a good bet on the conditional when he won the Ultima, because he was dropped when I think he placed in the Classic Chase at Warwick the start before, and just didn't stay. Travelled like a dream, and the handicapper dropped him a couple of pounds for that. So I thought that's really, really lenient. No chance, he ran close enough to his rating the time before. We'll have another go. And luckily, he went and won at Cheltenham. On the same topic, if a horse only goes up, 5 and I'd make it 8, it's still well enough. So I think I'm very much a visual man, and then I kind of using numbers and figures, etc., to back it up. But obviously, like you said, things like course form, ground is all hugely important. But I guess I would say is I'm very much I give it a go before I write it off. Sort of character. The idea that a horse who hasn't run on soft ground or heavy ground, that wouldn't be enough to put me off backing them on their first run. If they've run badly on it, fair enough. But I'd always be happy enough to give it a go. Until I see that it can't, I'll assume that it might be able to.
Do you have any sorts of, I've heard about the races you prefer, handicappers with more exposed horses in them. Are there any courses in particular that you're a fan of or not a fan of? Particularly on the flats, course makeup is so important these days. And of course, we know we can literally now map out stall performances, etc., which you can get a lot of on time from anyway. So are there any places you prefer, from a punting point of view at least, to go and do your work at?
Yeah, I guess so. I'm not I guess something where the playing field is kind of already slanted a bit would kind of be the sort of courses I'd enjoy punting at the least. So you're looking at your ones with the built-in draw biases, your Chesters, or that Golden Mile they have at Glorious Cuddle, which is a race, probably the race most affected by the draw in the country. They're the sort of courses I'd be less keen on punting, but I'm, like I say, I don't have any particular hard and fast rules. I'm not mega strict on this is at Chester, I won't punt it. In an ideal world, I'll find I prefer punting at the course I consider the fairest, but those things are clearly factored in. The draw biases, etc., are factored in when you're deciding your bet anyway. Just sometimes it's it makes things a little bit trickier trying to work out how much value to put on them in certain circumstances.
One thing that we do ask people on here is what they believe sort of their top skill is. You know, for want of a better word, I guess I might say edge, but what do you think is the one thing that you do really well when you're either analysing races or tipping or looking for clues sort of in hindsight?
It's a hard one, that, but I just think, over time with watching it, I think you learn to be a decent judge, and sometimes you'll be wrong, but I trust my own judgment with the visuals. Like I say, I'm quite a numbers man when it comes to handicapping, and I've got a fairly decent sort of like mental library of the sort of figures that I have horses running to recently and what I think they're capable of running to. Obviously, alongside all the treasure trove of information that you have on Timeform. So it's I guess I'd say it's a weird one, but I guess my edge just kind of comes from my own kind of visual judgment, I guess, and hopefully that'll stay there, and it without wanting to sound blowing any sort of trumpet. It's not a I'm happy enough that I back my own judgment, and I can gauge well enough when I reckon a horse is well in at the weights based on what it's been doing previously.
Thank you very much. I think it's a good place to end part 2 of this edition of Betting People. Thank you, Lewis, and thanks very much for watching.